Take my bride, let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Here's where we will go. Nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill, and today it's going to be early German engineering in the house, y'all. Well, at least Germanic, because when you get prior to World War I, you know, what's German, what isn't German, I mean, you got Holy Roman Empire at some point. So it's Germanic, you know, there's going to be some Austrians, maybe a Czech here, but Germany. And it's, again, going to be the early automotive industry. So folks before the, you know, the 1870s, about then, we're not talking about, as well as those who were post World War I. So, you know, about, you know, 1870 to 1914, that's the period. And we're going to see at least this American's view of who were the players back in the day from Germany. Let's take a look. Number 10, Emil Gelene. Emil Gelene is an interesting fellow. You know, he did a lot for the automotive industry early on, working with Daimler primarily, but other manufacturers as well. He established one of, if not the first automotive dealership in the world in France, although he's German, and was even a, you know, an ambassador and all other kinds of stuff. And he moved automobiles around Europe, selling them, moving them, and he was a player. And he also was the guy who worked with Daimler to design a car that he believed his customers wanted, which ultimately led to the Mercedes. And although he was not an engineer, he definitely moved the industry in a very specific direction, and his impact is still felt to this day. So he's number 10 on this list. Number 9, Bertha Benz. I'll admit some people may think that it's odd that I would put Bertha Benz as being this important because of her trip that she made in August of 1888 to bring press to the car, which hadn't been done before. But I think her importance in the automotive industry is because, being a man myself that has been married for 25 years, that I know how important a wife is in the home. And I know that engineers as a species are typically not wanting to make solid, ram-packed decisions unless they're really pushed towards it. And that's what Bertha did. She really pushed her husband to start the automotive industry. And yeah, I mean, I've done these lists. I've talked about some ladies before, but you'll really, you know, she was that important by just knowing how to really support her man and stand behind him. And yeah, she's that important. She's number 9 on this list. Number 8, August Horch. August Horch is a man that made some beautiful cars, and he wanted to make the ultimate in luxury cars. And this was, you know, very early on. We're talking 1900. You know, I mean, Rolls-Royce didn't even exist for another, you know, 4 or 5 years. And he wanted to do this and make Germany the home of luxury cars. And he darn near succeeded. Horch's designs in how he built his vehicles with power and speed was very influential for dozens of car makers across Europe, including Rolls-Royce, including, you know, companies like Isora Fraschini, Fiat, Lancia. Yeah, I mean, there's a Delage. You know, Horch influence on the design and direction in the luxury market, I think is, you know, and yeah, is largely forgotten today. And I think it's unfortunate. He's mostly remembered, you know, for Audi. But yeah, he did a lot to direct the industry back in the day. He's number 8 on this list. Number 7, Hans Ledwinka. Yes, I know he's born in Austria, but again, we're Germanic. Hans Ledwinka is one of those engineers that was utterly brilliant, and unless you are a serious car nut, you don't know him. Yet, he invented so many things for cars that we take for granted. Does your car have a bumper on it? That's Hans Ledwinka. He invented that. He was the first ever to put bumpers on a car, the El Presidente, when he was with Nesselsdorfer. The whole idea of a magnesium block rear engine and the idea of having the engine and transmission as a single unit that could be simply dropped into a car. That was maybe famously discussed by Tucker. It was achieved by Volkswagen, but no, Hans Ledwinka did it long before any of them. And there's a lot of question about how much, Ferdinand Porsche and Hans Ledwinka were looking over each other's shoulders and borrowed from each other because they were both brilliant. I've got episodes. I've got an episode on Hans Ledwinka. I've got other things about him. He's definitely somebody to check out. Yeah, he's definitely number 7 on this list. Number 6, Ferdinand Porsche. Yeah, I can't leave Ferdinand Porsche alone, obviously, on this list. And surprisingly, prior to World War I, his major work was in electric and hybrid cars, not so much in, just gas-powered cars, which is what Hans Ledwinka was doing mostly. Porsche, he revolutionized the electric car industry in his time. His ideas not only to make a car that would be an all-wheel drive car, which yes, Ferdinand Porsche built an all-wheel drive car, 1898. He built a hybrid car with regenerating braking by 1899. He had built different electric systems to work with different suspension systems, which made their ways to cars, but also made their way into military vehicles very quickly. Ferdinand Porsche, after, the interwar period towards that, he was a bigger player. So when the day comes when I make, my interwar list, he's one of those people that'll show up in both. In fact, Hans might do as well. Nonetheless, number 6 on this list. Number 5, Sigfried Marcus. One of the forgotten inventors, but yet extraordinary prolific. Sigfried Marcus, electrical engineer, industrial engineer, hundreds of patents. Gave Thomas Edison a run for his money. This guy invented the car, as we know it, the gas-powered car. He invented it. He was the very first one to build. He didn't patent it, but he did it. This man had built a motor vehicle, gas-powered motor vehicle by 1866, but it wasn't really a car. But by 1873, he had built a gas-powered car, and he built more than one. He built a few of them. And he was friends with a lot of other German engineers at the time. They knew each other. They worked together with Nicholas Otto. He had and others that, were at the time. But he didn't care. He simply, he was already just a multimillionaire. He had all, he was just making these things as a hobby. He's like, yeah, I'll make a car. Yeah, I made a car. Yeah, I made a car. Yeah, I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, you want to patent it? That's fine. I don't care. He just didn't care. But nonetheless, there's some people on this list we're going to hear about shortly that got a lot of their ideas specifically from Sigfried Marcus. He's number 5 on this list. Number 4, Frederick Lutz. Frederick Lutz, as a automotive designer, was brilliant, and also in how he would apply his car specifically in the industry. He led the way for a lot of companies that would manufacture cars and then keep them for their own use. For example, Hertz, car rental companies. He was the first in Germany to actually built the first purpose-built taxi in the world. Making cars commercial, for himself and for others. He established his own taxi lines, bus lines, etc. And he commercialized cars. When you think of Uber today, and and having a taxi, and that sort of thing, and he started that. He began that process. Oh, and by the way, you like the radiator you have on your car to keep it cool? He invented that too. I mean, Lutzman, and there's more. I mean, Lutzman he's one of the forgotten ones from Germany, but he shouldn't be. He's number 4 on this list. Number 3, Gottlieb Daimler. Yeah, I have made these lists, and you're wondering, why have I not put Gottlieb Daimler on this list? And it's because Gottlieb Daimler didn't care about cars, quite frankly. He was all about the engine and making a power plant that could be used for anything. And he made his engines to be used with anything, from boats to portable engines and generators and pumps to cars and eventually aircraft. Although he died before aircraft, but that's unfortunate. But nonetheless, Gottlieb Daimler didn't want to get into the car business, but the car business was forced upon him. And because of this, he became a force in the industry. Daimler built the world's first motorcycle. He was amongst the first car manufacturers. He did not make his first car was not designed from the ground up to be a car like Carl Benz did and like Sigfried Marcus did. But rather, he took existing carriages and said, well, let me make an engine that could be fitted to one of these things, and you can convert a carriage to a car. And surprisingly enough, that for about 10 years, and actually in America even longer, that was popular. You could buy kits from Daimler and eventually other companies that would take your horse-drawn carriage and turn it into a car. He was the first to do that. He, of course, began to get, as, he got more pressure from the industry and for people like Emil Gelene, he started focusing more on cars. But he was an industrial powerhouse, Daimler was, in what they were able to produce, the amount of engines, the amount of different type of vehicles they could do. And, of course, they expanded. You have Austro-Daimler, you have British Daimler, etc., that continue on to their own greatnesses. Yeah, Gottlieb Daimler was way important in Germany. He's number 3 on this list. Number 2, Carl Benz. Well, yeah, the man to first patent a car, at least patent a real car. Sorry, George Selden. But Carl Benz was a real engineer with a real company with real manufacturing ability and built a real car. In 1885, he built the patent motor wagon. He patented it in 1886, received the patent for it. And of course, he went, well, it could be better. It could be better. It could be better. Until finally his wife, a couple years later, forced his hand. And then he said, okay, I'll put it into production. But that began the automotive industry as we know it. Gottlieb Daimler really didn't establish the industry. Even though he made more cars than Benz did in the first few years, he didn't do it for the purpose of making cars. Benz did. He established the world's first car manufacturer that was specifically for making cars. And he did it because of his wife. but more importantly, he did it because that was the direction that the industry was going. By 1888, what was happening was being seen elsewhere, and also in France, which I've talked about some of those early innovators. But Benz was an incredible inventor. The modern spark plug that we know was him. The radiator that Lutzmann perfected was based on the one that Benz had made prior. He invented the two-stroke engine. How many engines are in cars and in motorcycles and in small machines that run two-stroke engines? Like that's Carl Benz. He invented that. Yeah, Carl Benz. He's critical to the automotive industry. Number 2 on this list. Number 1, Wilhelm Maybach. Yeah, Wilhelm Maybach. If you take all of Germany's early engineers and put them together into one mastermind to make the ultimate car, it was Wilhelm Maybach who received that through Professor X and built the Mercedes Model 35. This is the first modern car. Wilhelm Maybach got the geometry right, the balance right, the center of gravity right, the orientation of the car right. And every car on the road today is based on the calculations of how to make a car that were made by Wilhelm Maybach in 1901. His work absolutely is found on every car in the world today. And he is number 1 on this list. Well, there's this American's list of the Germans. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next week. Peace.